everyone, and today we are finishing up our mad scientist bubbler tube by completing it with a paint job that's going to make it worthy of young Frankenstein's laboratory. So I see you all coming in, and of course David Beck is always the first one, with of course offerings of chicken drumsticks, lightning for this project. We need that lightning energy, and then some water because we got to stay hydrated, especially in this heat. And I'm going to warn you, my household is a little bit nuts with the heat. Although the air is pumping and it feels cool in here, everybody seems hot and bothered. Even there's a fly flying somewhere here. So we have Amicus on the prowl, and hopefully he'll get it for us, so it won't hit me in the head. All right, and then David Beck is also saying, let's have a little bubbly. Yes, it would be nice to have both kinds of bubbly. This kind of bubbly and the celebratory kind of bubbly as well. But perhaps this week, because it is July 4th coming up on Sunday. So that means a lot of people are still traveling on Monday because they're observing it on Monday. So all of next week's streams are going to move by one day. So the Monday public stream will be Tuesday, and then the Wednesday Wrench Army stream will be Thursday. Same times though, 6 p.m., night times. So far Ripley has been good. I know we had a bet going on Monday because I heard some bad chewing, and I went to check up on her, and she was just kind of sitting there like, nothing to see here. And of course we had me and Jell saying, oh, she done something bad, you know, and I know I'm going to wrap up the stream and find something destroyed. But David Beck had faith in her, and I believe he was the only one that gave her a good mark and said, trust me guys, she's being good. And she was. I didn't find anything destroyed. So you two are planning things together. You know, she was like, oh, you know, I have to impress now. So she was on her best behavior. But I started, testing out some paint on our electrical insulator type of, top and bottom thing. I might have gone overboard with the burning on this, and David Beck is noticing my shirt. Yes, Goonies. This was actually on a couple nights ago, and I had things to do, but then I just, like, half an hour later, I am still watching the Goonies. Best childhood movie ever. Love it. And they better not remake it and ruin it. I know that they're remaking Fletch, and I have high hopes. I, of course, will have high hopes. I don't expect them to imitate Chevy Chase or anything like that, but hopefully they get the tone of the humor right. But that's a tall order because a lot of that, I think, came from Chevy Chase. But I'll still be watching that movie. I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. Anything Fletch. So where was I? Yes, the bubbler tube. Let's catch up from where we were last time. We had our tube. You know, that was the easy part. This is a Voss water bottle, and I went ahead and last time we drilled a hole for it. I painted the cap black, just to kind of disguise the fact that this is a blatant water bottle. And we made our custom bubbler tube, and you'll see that I pretty much prettied it up a little bit. I cut it a little bit shorter so it fits in here nicer. Also, I drilled, let me give you guys a better view here. You remember me drilling this hole right here, and we stuck the tube in. I have this red cap to hold the air in, so that way when air comes, it'll just start bubbling everything, and it won't have anywhere to go. And we'll figure out how to get the air out of here. Obviously, we don't want this to over pressurize, but I have an idea for that. So in order to secure this in place, last time we kind of wrapped a bit of tape to kind of temporarily hold this together. And for this to come out and not, me having to drill a whole other hole for it, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna drill a hole in here and have it come out from the inside. That way we can close this up and run it to the back of the control panel. So I think that's gonna work out better. So I think this, last I tested it, fit pretty well. And I'm gonna twist it. One of you guys had this idea, I think it was David Beck, like just twist it, because it is a snug fit. Look at that, there is no gap, like no gap whatsoever. So this combination of aquarium tubing and copper pipe worked out perfectly. So I'm just gonna seat it in the middle there. And that's looking pretty good. And when this starts fizzing, oh, that's going to look great. And I really did love our Jacob's ladder idea where we had 2 1/4-inch copper pipes kind of in a V like this with the tubing going in between them. It looked really cool, but because this tubing is pretty flimsy, it was kinking around every turn because it had to make such a sharp bend. Whereas this, I believe this is like a 3/4-inch tubing. Yes, it's a 3/4-inch tubing. It allows the air tube to bend much more gradually so we don't get any kinks. So I think that's going to work out a ton better. So that already looks pretty cool. And then we're going to shine light from the bottom here. We're going to tape, I even separated out a tiny little LED for us, but I'm thinking of maybe doing 2 so we can like alternate colors or create some cool blinking effects. So I think I'm going to cut out another one. I'll let you guys decide, 1 LED or 2 LED for colors. So that's this portion, and then we went ahead and bent more of that PVC trim that I had left over from the faux cathedral window and wrapped 2 of them around like this. And I was pretty surprised that we were able to get such an extreme bend with them. And in the end, I think David pointed out, they look like insulators, like electrical insulators, and I had not planned it that way. It just happened to work out that way, and I'm like, okay, let's just like run with this, right? Now, of course, bending PVC this extreme, some areas got overheated, and you can see here where in trying to scrunch these together, you can see my scrunch finger marks that created a gap. So what you see here is coffee grounds. I went ahead and stuck a bead of hot glue there and then mashed in some coffee grounds for us to get started. And you can see kind of how far I got with this guy right here, a little bit of coffee grounds to create the burnt effect. Now, coffee grounds, especially much more coarse than this. This is a very fine cut coffee ground, so it doesn't do it as well. But the real coarse kind is really great for haunted houses, horror effects like coagulated blood and things. I used it for one of my zombie builds. So it's a great way to just add that texture. And then if you have cinnamon, you can also sprinkle that on top, and that gives you a killer rust effect without really having to use much paint. Now, we're not going to use cinnamon in this instance, but the coffee grounds, the shop smells really good. It's like now all of our props are like super delicious smelling, and it just woke me up. And Frozen Mustache is voting for 2 LEDs. 2 LEDs it is. Unless anyone else votes, so keep the votes coming. And I think that I was going to put them on the bottom here, like 1 over here and 1 over here. And of course, we have a convenient hole to pass the wires. And this hole is also going to be convenient. Uh-oh, did I lose it? To pass this little guy here. And I'll hold it up to give you guys a better... Oh no, is it going to focus? No, it is like, I refuse to focus on this next part of the build. Anyways, we have this little coupler right here for our air tubing. So I'm going to drill a hole at the bottom of the bottle and stick this, up its bum, just like that. And then the tubing is going to connect to this end, and it's going to feed our vape pen little mini reservoir, so we don't ever have to worry about it running out. And of course, we'll mount this bottle higher than the vape pen reservoir, and so it'll just kind of gravity feed into there. At least that's the idea. And then the air hose will be fed up through the control panel somehow, and we're going to hide the pump behind there, and it's going to pump air, which is then going to create our bubbling effect. So I think that's going to look pretty cool. And with the LED, the nice thing about that is that we don't have to add any food coloring to the fog juice, because 2 things with that. You have to get through the whole fog juice if you want to change colors, and not only that, plastic is porous. Over time, that food coloring starts to stain the walls, which on the one hand gives you a very cool aged effect, but once you start mixing a lot of color, it just starts looking more black and tarry, and then starts to obstruct your bubble view there. You want a nice bubble visage going on. So I think the LEDs are going to be a much better bet. It's really going to let the bubbles sparkle. It's going to allow us to change colors on the fly. And heck, maybe something can happen when there's lightning. It can flash a whole bunch of colors and go nuts, to go in concert with our faux cathedral window. So the next part of this is I'm going to hold off on drilling this hole and hot glue gunning that little coupler, because I know we're going to want to put this down all the time, and that thing's going to either get broken off or it's just going to be in the way. So that'll be like the last step. So next, I definitely want to do the paint job for this guy. So I think we should apply some coffee grounds, let it dry while we work on drilling the rest of the holes in the cap, painting some of the cap, because some of the cap is going to be exposed. Let's see how much of this cap is going to be exposed. So this is going to kind of sit on top like that. So yeah, we do have just this little bit right here that'll be exposed. So we want to like make it look like some of this iron piping that I picked up. See, I had these two 3/4 inch flanges from a previous project. I had high hopes of adding some kind of folding leaf to my work table here, and then I got involved with other projects, and you know, things happen, and didn't quite get around to it. So I'm going to steal these, and instead I'm going to use them for this project right here. So I have these two. One will mount to the top of this cap like this, and we'll drill these holes, and one of them is going to serve as our air vent. So one of them we're going to drill and not put a screw there, or nuts with bolts and nuts. That's what I'm trying to say. Bolts and nuts will hold these three together. And then I bought this elbow right here. And so we'll be able to screw the elbow in like that. And then this will screw into our control panel. And our control panel, we all decided, was going to be wood, like a stained wood. So we're going to go ahead and go that route. And I think that's going to be awesome because we have so many cool Frankenstein elements going on in the cathedral window. This is very steampunk copper iron. So it'll be nice to add that warm, rich wood. And then we'll have covered all of our material bases, I think, at that point. So yeah, I think this will look pretty cool. Like if my arm is you know, the control panel, this will attach like this, which will then attach to the water bottle. So anytime that we have to change out the fluid, all it is just unscrewing this from the top and then pulling it out and in. And then we'll use some maybe double-sided tape to kind of just hold this bottom portion onto here. And the double-sided tape should be enough to hold. This is so light, you know, it's really not gonna go anywhere. And the double-sided tape also allows me to pry it off much easier than something like a hot glue in case I need to service any of the LEDs, or, you know, there's a leak or anything like that. So I think we got plans for everything. And before we start gluing and painting, I say we do our coffee grounds on here so it can go drying while, you know, we move on. So I'm gonna move this here, and I'll give you guys a closer look at what I already did. So this is the front, because obviously if you remember from the last time, when I bent this around, I cut it too short, and we have a big old gap here. So I'm gonna cleverly disguise this, you know, in the back of the unit, and this will just hook on like that. So no one will ever see it. You know, we'll just use a little bit of hot glue, and you know, that'll be fine. So this will be the front of it where people will see. And it's got a couple burn marks. I use some acrylic paints, browns, yellows, because the insulators, when they first start to kind of run hot and burn, it always starts off as this like yellow color, and then it starts getting progressively brown. But in our case, well, something definitely caught fire, you know, so the coffee grounds definitely help sell that, that burnt look. And so I'm going to repeat the same thing, but a little less burny on this one. You know, I went overboard here to really disguise the mistake. And, I went ahead and just added a whole bunch of coffee grounds, like something kind of exploded back here. And that's why it's missing some of the insulation. So yeah, we're going to go with that story. So what I did with these to prepare, you can see I spackled. Now I could have spackled and sanded this completely smooth to the point where you would have never even seen any of this stuff going on, but I kind of liked it. I'm rocking like the Bob Ross motto this entire project, which there are no mistakes. There's only happy little surprises, because I think we can use these defects to add coffee grounds and kind of show a irregular kind of burn. And I think that's going to look super cool. And David Beck is also saying the 2 LEDs. So yes, rock on. We're going to do that. And let's see. in order to glue the coffee grounds, I'm going to use Mod Podge. Now you can use Elmer's glue. It works just as well. This is like a glue and a sealer at the same time. So let's see, I kind of loosened this cap earlier because, man, once this glues on, it is like busts out the plumber's wrench. That's the only way you're going to get the cap off. So I have a couple different paint brushes, and I usually like to pick out my oldest, grossest paintbrush here. So let's see which one is oldest and grossest. Maybe this guy, since he's kind of small and I don't want to go too nuts with him. And I'm going to first add, let me bring my coffee into view here. Delicious. Give that a whiff, guys. Very, very delicious. Let's see. I'm coming up with a strategy. I think I'm going to kind of just go like this and then kind of heavy it here and then kind of go like this. Yeah. Let's go for it. All right. Get the little Mod Podge going. And it does take a little while to dry. The Mod Podge comes in different finishes, so gloss, matte. This happens to be gloss. For this project, it's fine. For foam miniatures, I actually prefer the matte. The gloss has never really done anything, bad or made anything look worse, but matte would probably be a better choice. Now, Mod Podge is, of course, more expensive than Elmer's glue, so that's one of the reasons why I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to keep going and use this bottle up. Is that Brazilian coffee? David Beck is asking. This particular one is not. I think it's Lavazza, the Lavazza coffee. And so I had some in a bag, and I'm like, oh, I'll just use this. I think for another project, for the Zombie Head project, I used Café Bustelo, which is also, I don't think that one's Brazilian either, but it's one that I like a lot. All right, I think that's enough. That's enough glue. That's a lot more than what I anticipated adding. So now I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle this on liberally. Oh, that smells good, guys. That smells good. I'm going to pat this. We'll see how it ends up looking, and we can always add more. Now, if you want to build up burn marks really high or in very cool shapes, the best way to do it is to first create the shape with the hot glue gun and then Mod Podge it on. Or you can also sprinkle it on top of the hot glue, but I find that it kind of loses its coarse, its fluffy kind of, appearance, when you tap it right into the glue. So this remains more fluffy, but it is pretty fine. For this type of thing, I really like using the more coarsely ground. And you can also use pepper kernels, anything that's got a nice coarse texture. Gravel, very, very fine gravel. Cat litter, as long as it's not the clumping kind, because the second you get that wet, if you have to use like a acrylic wash or anything like that, then it turns into Clay doh. It clumps up. So you want the non-clumping kind. So I'm going to leave that there and just kind of shake off the excess. And that's a huge burn mark. But once we start messing with it, a lot of that will fall off. And we can work with that. So I'm going to conserve my coffee grounds here, and I'm going to move this. Let's see which one of these has less water. Get this guy in here so the glue doesn't set up on the brush in case we want to add more or add a couple different touches. So I'm going to close that up, and let's see if I can funnel this in to my coffee. All right, as long as I get most of it. Yeah, not bad. This is like the best smelling project I've ever done. All right. So coffee grounds, I'll put you over here so you don't spill. And I'm going to give you a moment to dry there. Move you and move this guy. Or leave him right here, because I got nowhere to move him. So next is our cap. And let's figure out what the heck it is we want to do with this. Now, which way. So this is the one that mounts to the wall because I bought a 2.5-inch coupler here, or nipple as they're called. So a 2.5-inch, so I can stretch the water bottle. People, I got like coffee delirium now. I'm all like jittery from smelling it. So the objective was to move the water bottle away from the control panel, so that way it's got its own room. I'd like to wrap some copper piping around it, so if this was too short, then it'd be like scrunched right up against the control panel. So this will give us enough room, I think, and then we'll just anchor this to our water bottle cap. All right. So for now, we're just gonna remove you and put you over here. So I'm gonna draw some holes. Actually, it might be good to kind of there we go. Kind of get this settled. Now here's the back of it. So I want this elbow facing back there as well. And that's pretty good. And then that'll be like that. Yeah, that'll look nice. Yeah, we'll just have to paint that little bottom in there. So and that's got plenty of room. Just trying to center the water bottle and our piece here. Kind of get everybody together because it can move around quite a bit. There we go. Now, the objective is to drill the holes such that they kind of pop out in this area right here. So hopefully we can do that. And that looks pretty centered if we look down. So I'm going to try and hold this position, and I'm going to cheat and kind of look at it myself here where I can see. And theoretically, that should work. And I should have a Sharpie here where we can mark the holes. It's black on black, but I think it's removing the black paint. So that should mark it enough for us. There we go. It's a little close to the edge, but I think it can work because the bolts that I want to use aren't very thick. So they're pretty minimal, but more than enough for something like this. So I just had a brain fart there. David is asking a good question, and I had looked into it. So he's asking, did you figure out how many turns to unscrew the reservoir? So let me remove this thing right here until we figure out that. So the lid is always going to be stationary. That's not going to move because that's going to be anchored to the wall control panel. And it's going to be, well, the lid is going to be anchored to that iron piece, the iron flange. So the lid is always going to be this way. So that ugliness will always stay in the back. We never have to worry about that. It's more this part, you know, like if we want this decor to be in the front, then we have to make sure that when we screw it in a way and know how many turns it is. So that way this guy always faces forward. Or after we finish painting this, if it looks like really bad and we want to put it in the back, you know, then we need to figure out that many screw rounds as well. So I have not counted actually. So I'm just going to put it in here and go with just a Rachel screw. So 1, or do over, 1, 2, like 2-ish, 1, 2, 1.5, 1.5, 1.5. If I get it, you know, seated correctly. So yeah, 1.5. 1.5 screws pretty much gets it done. So I know that if I want this facing forward, then 1.5 screws to get this facing forward. So position it, you know, in that way. So that's not too hard. This is the big one that I always was worrying about because I didn't want this like hideousness to be in the front. But this is going to be anchored such that we can just spin the bottle out. And so the entire weight of the bottle is actually going to be from the cap. And I was kind of worried about that, but I don't think it's going to be that bad because the cap is going to be screwed to the flange, which is screwed to the control panel. So this cap's not going to unscrew from the control panel. Now, you know, will the stress of the water bottle, you know, the weight start to morph this? I mean, I don't know. I'm going to use some washers and things, and I don't really foresee myself filling this all the way all the time. I think I'm just going to fill it to there. So those are the only, well, that one thing is really the only thing that I still have to think about. And then this almost weighs nothing. I mean, it's just PVC. So once I secure this, all we're going to do is just turn this entire assembly to remove it. That way, I wanted to prevent something where I had to unscrew it from the control panel and do all this disassembly just to be able to refill it. So let's see what I got going on here. And I have this little screw right here, and let's get some washers for him. And where's my washer stash? A little washer collection here. And maybe something like this. Just want to make sure it fits. This washer fits, and it does. Look, that's pretty perfect. And we'll put another washer on the nut side. And I think it was this little guy right here. And that'll be that. So that should work out pretty well. Let's see, this is pretty thin, which is nice. That means we don't have to drill in these big old holes. So this was kind of like the initial plan on putting this together, because one of the things that we also had to battle was removing the water bottle. Once we kind of clamp it up top and it sits inside this little, you know, insulator thing, it makes it really tough to pull it out and then remove it. So I figured this almost has to be like a permanent fusion, or semi-permanent, I'm going to call it semi-permanent fusion. So that way we can remove the whole thing and then fill it up from the top. So let's see, because originally I was going to put one flange on the top and one flange on the bottom, and that would make a really cool connection. But then how do you remove the bottle if it's kind of attached from the top and the bottom? And then things started to get pretty complicated from there. So what am I looking for? I am looking for a drill bit. Something very mild. Maybe something like that. That might work. Not too spicy. We're going mild salsa drill today. Drill bit. Okay, I got all this stuff on my lap, and I'm gonna stand up for this and put my eyeballs on, and here we go. Already done. So let's see what happens when do they line up? All right, they look pretty lined up. And oh, there it is. So I should now be able to, trying to think. I think I want the air tube decoratively coming out of this, because this is the back of our situation, and I'll just kind of rest them like that. That's kind of the back there, and this is the front. So we can have, I was thinking of putting in this copper pipe right here. Probably easier for you guys to see this way. Let me bring this over here. And it's probably easier, and I'll face this forward as if the bubbler tube is facing you guys. And I thought it would be cool to somehow incorporate this bubbler tube and maybe put him maybe back here, and then wrapping around the bottle, or maybe kind of in front. That looks neat. And, or here. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with one of these two holes right here. So that means that these three are gonna be bolted to the cap. So let me start with this one and work my way around. Put this guy aside. And let's see. These holes are a little small. I'm just gonna lose the flange here for a second and lose the, I might have been over conservative here with the holes. And also the little wisps, the little plastic barbs from the drilling are kind of in the way. All right, I might go a little bit bigger on the holes. All right, we're stepping it up. Instead of mild salsa, it is medium drill bit salsa time. So let's see. Maybe this guy right here. You have failed me for the last time, drill bit. Right. That should do it. So I think that looks better. Like we'll be able to get these in now. Yeah. Maybe. I'm just getting them started in each hole, so that way it's much easier for us to put in when I attach the flange. Now, luckily I have another cap. So if over time I find that the cap starts to get deformed or just can't hold the weight, then I got another cap. Or I might just come up with a different design. But I think we're gonna be okay. I'm pushing it to its limits. I think that hole size was pretty good. And I think this guy still needs to be done over here. And I believe these are half-inch bolt heads. So let's get this situated. Where's the hole? There. I'm trying to remember, it's like facing me now, the front, which one I liked better. Something like that, or something like that. I think I like this one the best. Yeah, that looks nice. So the others will be little screw holes. So I think if I just get them started, and where did my other screws go? My bolts, meaning my bolts. My littlest ones. I just need 2 more. Two matching nuts. Let me just make sure that these match up, because I have a whole assortment. Why do these feel so big? But they work. They feel awkwardly big, but they are threading pretty well until this one decided to mess around. There we go. I'm gonna hide you back here, and you guys can kind of hang over there. So we have one. Let's see how many more we can do, and I'm gonna steal you, little washer. And we're gonna continue this way. And I don't know why I have this thing on here. Just to be in the way on purpose. Let's make it extra challenging, which is, I will admit, the Rachel way. Like, this is far too easy. There we go. And I have a little socket set here to make our lives a little bit easier. And let me find that 1/2 inch. These are not 1/2 inch. They're way small. Oh, here we go. They were in the wrong slot. There we go. It is 11:30 seconds. 11:30 seconds. Kind of help me get them in there a little bit easier. Not going to do it all the way just yet. Just get them nicely started and mostly secure. Am I missing a washer? Sorry. I am not organized today. All right. And I think we can paint these little guys to just match up with the rest of its surroundings. And get them to poke through just a little bit more. Odd way of tightening it, but I'm gonna go with it. All right, feeling pretty good. And looking at it this way, I think we did a pretty good job of getting it mostly centered on our flange there. You know, maybe a little bit wider on one side, but almost unnoticeable. So I think that's pretty good. All right, this hole we're gonna leave empty for our copper tubing. And then I'm going to somehow rent a 4-year-old's hand to get in there and tighten these things. Oh dear. Let's see. I may not even be able to get little washers on here. Yeah, so I don't think that's gonna work. So we'll just have to go with nuts. Go, nuts, go. It's going to be tight. One on there. I think that'll be enough for now because we're not going to fill it just yet. We're going to fill it when we assemble our wall panel, which is next week. I'm super excited for that because we're going to be employing all of our knife switches, cool indicator lights, and we're going to leave a little bit room for future weather telling instruments like temperature, barometric pressure, humidity, that type of thing. So start making a list and I'll start adding to it. So I'm going to hide these little nuts in here. And rather than struggle with it, we got one in so we can at least get everything mocked up. And I'm going to toss these guys back in here. And over here. There we go. So this is kind of the general idea. And there we go. You know, I think we can paint these up to look like, you know, the rest of this iron. And this will just screw on to our bottom of the bottle. Anytime we need to refill the reservoir, screw and unscrew. And this is always stationary. So that's going to kind of help maintain this type of mess right here. And we can get this, you know, pretty much glued down like that. So let me start up the hot glue gun just so it starts doing its thing. Heating up, takes its time to heat up. And we can go back to our coffee grounds because we have our top portion already drilled up. All we're gonna do is glue on our, you know, decorative piece. There's no structural anything to this. It's just purely decorative. So we're gonna glue that in a bit. And then let's see how this, you know, ended up looking. Let me get rid of some of this stuff right here. That's all up in our way. Because you know how, you know, this is gonna go psh, all over the place. And make sure that my hot glue tip is not touching anything not good. All right, so I'm gonna move this out of the way for now. And let's figure this guy out. So we're gonna have our little LEDs sitting on the bottom here, and I'm just going to use their little adhesives to put them here. The little wire running in through that hole along with our coupler. And I found another nut along with our coupler, as well as the tube coming out to feed our vape pen reservoir or little mini reservoir. So this is pretty much decorative. Its only function is to look good. You know, we're gonna work on that and then hold the two little LEDs and, you know, have an access for our tube. So let's see, we should be able to then use a piece of double-sided tape, or, you know, heck, it might even be hot glue to stick the bottle on. And this can be kind of a permanent, or like I said, semi-permanent fuse to the bottle. We can always pop it off, especially if it's double-sided tape, and use something like Goo Gone to remove the adhesive. So let's see what this is kind of looking like. You can see I'm already shaking off a ton, and I'm just gonna rub my fingers kind of across it just to kind of get the excess stuff off. And I'm gonna try and not go so burny this time, although I've already you know, gone nuts on this thing. All right, so I got my little dollar store palette right here, and the first color I think I'm gonna go nuts with is dun 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 dun, I think like a raw umber, because it most closely resembles this coffee ground situation here. So I'm going to use just like a tiny bit right there. And that's really tiny amount. And what I'm going to do is, let me pick out a brush that I can poke at, like a little poke brush where you can just like poke. That's my professional name for the poke brush. And I think something like this will work out pretty good. Yeah, that's a good size. I'm kind of eyeballing people, you know, it's just not like I pre-picked this size. We're going to start with this one, see how it goes. And if it offends us, then I'll toss it across the room and we'll pick a different one. So now that we have that, I'm going to use the non-glue water. Yes, this is the non-glue water, to just start adding a little bit of water here. We're going to water this down. So most of what we're going to be doing is acrylic washing. That way the color is very translucent over the insulation, so we don't get any very solid blocks of color. Because the insulation, anytime you watch it burn, that yellow looks very translucent. You can still see some white in there. And so we want to try and mimic that as much as possible. So I'm just really making this really, really watery. All right, let's see how that is for now. And I'm just gonna start, you know, and again, the coffee grounds are more for texture than they are for color. So don't worry about coloring on top of it. because you do want to blend it into the rest. And you can see that it's very kind of light colored because I've watered it down. And we can always go thicker with the paint. So it's nice to start real watery and then kind of figure it out from there. And we're just going to start to blend this outwards a little bit. And I'm picking up some coffee grounds, moving it around. Very tasty. I'm gonna add a little bit more paint because there was a lot more coffee grounds that were loose. So it's kind of looking like that for now. I'm gonna let that dry while I add a little bit more paint and more water. Let's see, the non-glue water, because I have that other paintbrush that we used to do the Mod Podge sitting in a totally different glass, and I try and remember not to mix the two, just in case we want to add more coffee grounds somewhere, you know. It might be neat kind of going outside the edge of the bottle, that outer edge of the bottle, although bottles don't really, glass doesn't really burn, but it can be kind of just a discoloration over time. And this is where you can see it starts to almost look, you know, pretend that this were metal. If you were to just rub some coffee grounds like this and create splotches of coffee grounds and then throw some cinnamon on top, that's probably the easiest and least expensive way to create a rust effect. You know, obviously here we're not trying to create a rust effect because this is insulation, so it wouldn't really necessarily rust. It would more burn than anything. This is, we're kind of working our way towards the back here, or it could turn into the front. It could turn into the front if this whole thing starts looking really bad. You know, we can always switch sides here. And I'm just using my finger, see, to just dirty it up a little bit. And that's about all the brown I think I'm going to add, so it doesn't look too burny, you know, burnt up like the other one. I kind of went overboard, went nuts. So after this color, let's see if we add, let's see what this color looks like. Now this is, we just finished up with raw umber, and now I'm gonna go with raw sienna. And let's see, kind of a yellowy brown, kind of orangey brown. Yeah, let's do an orangey brown. And same thing, I'm just gonna not even really clean my brush so we get a good blend of the two colors. And maybe this one won't be so watery. Be a little thicker, because I'm gonna go in kind of in here and see what that does. Like, I don't know what it's gonna do. We're gonna figure out together. So, and we always do it on our final piece. Why practice it like normal people? Nope, we're just gonna go for it. All right, so that's kind of a nice blend. Kind of blending from the dark to kind of the whiter insulation area. It didn't turn out too well. I kind of had this, how it was going to look in my head. It is matching what I had in my head. I would say 60%. This is 60%. So that's kind of nice because it gives our burn some 3D dimensionality. Yeah, y'all know what I mean, right? And so not only do you have the coffee grounds kind of giving you that, you also have the paint, you know, so I always like to add the real texture with the fake painted texture. Yeah. So that's always nice, you know, and then if we had some cinnamon and we were doing metal, this would look very legit. So the last thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of the yellowing, like when the insulation is just starting to burn, and maybe we can add it to the top right here, you know, a little bit at the top. Like if you ever look at spark plugs, it's always where the very top meets the rest of the spark plug. That's where you start seeing that burn. So we're going to try and mimic that a little bit and maybe get some of the yellowing inside the crease right there. See what that looks like. So this is called yellow oxide. We used a lot of yellow ochre, I believe, for the Castle Frankenstein effects. So they pretty much almost look the same. They're very similar color yellows. So let me get in here. Now this one I definitely want to water down. I suspect I want to water it down a decent amount. There we go. Now these paints, I will not lie, are at least 15 years old. So in mixing them, you know, if I were to pull you guys a little closer, you would definitely see some gloopiness. So we're just gonna add some water, degloop. We're gonna degloopify this paint here. It's still usable. Don't give up on it. Don't give up on it. It might have already given up on itself, but I'm not giving up on it. It's like, no, you're still gonna do your job. You're gonna paint. You're gonna make my piece look beautiful. Frightfully beautiful in this case. We're making a frightfully beautiful burnt insulation. All right. I was thinking it would be cool to put some smoke coming out from the control panel sometimes too, like there's some kind of electrical spark situation happening, and we can put LEDs. I just got real quiet for a moment to see if this was gonna work. We can put you know, some kind of flash LED in the back, like as if something kind of shorted in the back of the control panel. See, look at me now making this project like 10 times bigger than it has to be. You guys started it. I blame you. So let's see here. I'm just kind of mixing some of this yellow, and it really could be more watered down. Except when I do that with my fingers, then it kind of gives the desired effect. So I'll be happy with that. So I'm gonna go kind of simple on the backside. And David is increasing the dictionary. We should publish a dictionary. We need to like create a list on Discord of all the words and then just like do a yearly dictionary. What's the 2021 dictionary of all the new vocabulary we have created? Because sometimes there ain't words to describe what we're doing and the results we're getting, you know? So now I'm just gonna hit up the top a little bit, and I really wanna wet this down like crazy. So I think, doesn't that water look delicious? Nothing like our coffee. So I'm just going very, very wet with this. See, it looks like a runny eggs a little bit. And because I want it to be like kind of barely there. That's better. Kind of burnt. Just starting the yellowing process up here. All right, and we have some here. We're gonna blot some of this as well, so it's not so strong. It's too strong. There we go. So we have this really nasty burn going with our insulation there. And let's see if I just water down. I'm gonna back some of it out. Do I have white anywhere? Maybe, maybe not. I am searching for my white. Here's another glooped one. Because this white here is seriously old. So let's see what happens when we try and eliminate some of the stuff I've done. And for this, I think I'm just going to use a different brush. Pretty much the same type of brush, but just a different, clean brush is what I should say. And I'm gonna try and not water it down, and I'm just gonna wipe a lot of it and maybe do like a little, you know, just a little dry brush to kind of gradient this a little bit, create a gradient. Because you see how it's like harsh, you know, it's just like yellow and then white. You know, there's no transition. So I'm gonna try and use this technique to create a transition. And this is a technique that I just invented on the spot, you know. This is, it's called the gradienting your mistakes effect. And we're just gonna do that. And that's beginning to look a ton better, I think. We'll just continue that all the way around. And it's actually kind of helping that this paint is old and real just thick. It's creating some nice textures on it. So don't give up on your old paints. Put them to work. Don't let them just take a nap, go on vacation. Because heck, we can't do any of that, right? We're working. So they got to work with us. I'm doing the same here. It got just a little bit too happy with the burning. Whoop, now I got too happy with the white. I'm trying to keep the ridge rather clean. And let me blot that a little bit because it's a bit much. See, I kind of went whoops on the ridge. So let's see if we can kind of disguise this a little bit. There we go. Kind of get rid of that mistake. Get rid of that mistake. It's nice. It's kind of like white out. We're just kind of white outing everything that I've done. We're creating verbs today, that's for sure. There, just kind of make them go away. Gosh, guys, when was the last time any of you all used white out? Oh my gosh. Remember the electronic type writers when they came out? No more whiting out your line. Man, I used a typewriter for a long time, like the old-fashioned ones all through school because computers were so expensive, you know, still. So I just used either the library computer, but when I came home, all my reports were typed up on ye old-fashioned typewriter, you know? And it only comes in one font. And so I would draw out the margins because it had to be exactly 1-inch margins, you know, on a word processor. So I would take a ruler and draw out the margins. And that way I knew that I was following the margin, rule that they had. I mean, who knows that the teacher even ever measured, you know, if you were following the margins or not. But I very much remember that. And any school projects where you had to do like very large board presentation, like with our poster board that we have, all those I pretty much hand wrote, you know, because the typewriter does one font. Who's going to see that in the back of the classroom? So I took my most nicest cursive and my most nicest print that I could do with my bare hands. And that's what I did. Oh, I don't want to get too close to the coffee ground. See, I get yapping with you guys like blah, 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 blah. And that's what happens. So I think that looks better. I think that looks better than what it did. It was a little too strong. So we softened it up there a little bit. And I'll soften right here. Notice a spot. I don't know. What do you guys think? More burn, less burn, leave it as is. Woman, don't touch it. Woman, step back. It looks fine the way it is. Less burn, we can always try and rub some of this stuff off. I was like, guys, I went way too much burn with the other one. Let's go less burn. And this is like 2 to 3 times more burn. So it's clearly opposite day here. And then David Beck says, great idea, New Year's party review Rachel isms. Yes, we can definitely do that. So let's see. I'm kind of taking a look here. What do you guys think? And here's kind of the top, although it's really tough to see in this light. So here's the top of it, and we can put our water bottle kind of in here. Imagine it with all of its fine bubbly juice in there, which is going to be our fog juice. And I think this is pretty good. I think I'll stop for now, unless you guys have, other opinions, and you're like, well, no, you got to keep going, or back it off a little bit. So I'll just keep this for now, and I will move him aside. And where are we with this whole thing? We got the cap. Where's the cap? Right here. So we might as well get this little cap thing, put it where you guys can see it first. Put this little cap thing up here. And for that, let me just make sure I know which way is back, right? We want this, I believe, to the back like this. Something like this. And I might as well put this guy back on. Just to make sure you know, he's going tight. I'm not going to take a wrench and go nuts and you know, it's not going to just magically screw off by itself. So something like that is pretty good. And he'll go back here, and I'll show you guys the back of it. Let me move him to where you can see. And so this is facing back, so I want to line this guy up here. And so what I'm going to do is put a bead of hot glue right here and then mash him on top and hold him. So let me just make sure I have a good deal of coffee grounds off this thing. I'm going to face the back towards me just so I can see a little bit better. And let's see how the hot glue is coming along. Yes, I feel it. And again, this is decorative. It's holding no weight other than its own, which is a tiny bit of PVC. So we should be good. It really shouldn't be a huge thing to just kind of hold it on. Am I running out of glue? Yes, I am. I'm going to grab another glue stick. But in the meantime, while that is still good, I'm going to do that. Put this and hold. Oh, what happened? Oh, I moved it. I moved it too forcefully. Yes, Eeyore did not approve. That's him barking. He didn't approve of my moving it. Now let's see if we have a good enough hold. And the other thing I can do is stick hot glue, you know, down in here, and that's going to give us even more hold. Oh, did it? Oh, it dried before I attached it with force. I moved it right when it was like, oh, and my hot glue is done. So let me grab another stick here a second. I've been doing way too much hot gluing with that foam miniature. There we go. Give it another go. Now don't move it, Rachel. Just hold it. Don't move it. The other effect we can create too, which is pretty neat, is using hot glue, you can create nice slime effects. And so you make your paint kind of translucent, a lot like we did by adding water, and you let that water, that colored water just kind of drip down the hot glue when it dries, and it gives you kind of a cool translucent type of effect. So you can add slime, kind of, you know, something's coming out of those pipes, things like that. So David Beck is saying he's liking the way this turned out. So to him, it's not overburnt. It's burnt to a perfect crisp, that insulation. So I'm just going to keep holding this here for a little bit, just to make sure it's in here. And if need be, oh heck, I will glue it up all the way up in here. All in these gaps here are going to get glue. And the gaps are not going to really be noticeable because this will be kind of sitting, you know, just like that. So we won't be able to tell. All right, that feels pretty good. And one of the things we'll have to deal with is this black is going to be visible. And I don't know what to do with it quite yet. Like if we want to paint it a copper color, if we want to paint it like silver to match this color, you know, maybe so it looks kind of one and the same. That might be kind of neat. So we can just kind of copy this effect right here. And let me put this on the non-coffee side. There we go. Stay there. And let's see. That's on there pretty good. Yes, just making sure. Just making sure. Let me move this hot glue out of the way. Right there. And make sure my gloopy paint is closed. So this guy I think will do pretty well here. And I'm going to move this guy out of the way, because we don't need him quite yet. Put him there. And we've got our browns done. So the next thing to do is paint up. And we said we're going to do this little hole last. So that way we don't have to worry about him. So the next thing is the copper piping winding around. I'm going to hit that pretty soon. And I'm thinking, do we want to do any paint effects on just this iron piping. It looks pretty good as is, but we can add a little bit more rust, a little bit more corrosion. I think that might be neat. We can experiment on one, you know, and then just do a little bit on the other if turns out we hate it. The other thing I know I do want to get is this situation right here. So let's mimic. Now, the easiest way of doing this that I should have done is I painted this black, but what I really should have done is sprayed it with the hammered metal spray paint. You know, that way it kind of comes out already looking like that. So we're going to try and imitate it with paint since I didn't do it and it's already screwed in and I kind of got ahead of myself. So we're just going to try and fix it now. And let's see, ooh, copper. I'm bringing out a couple metallics on this side to see if, ooh, bronze. Anything cool that we can do maybe. And gold is too gold. That's too bling for what we're doing. This has got to be more grunge. So let's see here. I'm going to put you here and you here so that way you can get to drying. And let's see this guy here. Creating this look. And I think what I'm going to do is mix a little bit of this black here. I'll give you guys a better view. And I'll, whoop, wrong. We're not chatting. I mean, we are chatting, but we're not just chatting. We're building while we're chatting, you know. No, just chit-chatting around. So I'm going to put a little bit of black. And also while doing that, move this to where you guys can see it. That's my black right there. And I'm going to add in some of this silver. And I'm not quite sure how this is going to look, but we're just going to go for it. So this is a silver acrylic because this silver is like way too bright. It doesn't look anything like this color right here. So we have to kind of get it to look that way somehow. And I'm going to use this little spatula to mix it. And I have no idea what this is going to do. I mean, I know it's going to make it darker, but I don't know how the metallic pigmentation will work with it. Like, will the black very much obliterate the shininess? Will it, you know, shine with the shininess? Yeah, so now we're getting something that looks a little closer to that. Yeah, I'm liking that. So, I knew this was going to happen, right? Yeah, I did this. I knew this mix would work. Not at all. All right, so let's get to it. I want to give this kind of a nice little base coat. And maybe I didn't have to put this top on just yet, but at the same time, it's kind of helpful that I did because I can kind of see up until where I need to paint. So all I'm doing is just splotching it on to mimic like a hammered effect. So I'm just going to splotch this on. And the two colors are mixed pretty well, but not 100% well. And this causes some blacks to kind of poke through sometimes and create some swirls. And may or may not be easy to see on camera, but I can see the effect here. But yes, much easier to have painted this with a spray paint and then done, you know, gone in. Now we're kind of like reverse engineering what we should have done, which is how these projects go. You know, sometimes we get a very cool idea for something and we're already into the project and, you know, might as well throw it in, right? Ooh, I'm getting it all myself. And then see some of these mistakes that I'm kind of oops. And, you know, along the insulation, it's really not going to be visible, like, at all. But if it really bugs me, I can always go in with a little bit of white and then, you know, just touch those up. So I'm going to see how much it bugs me. You know, by the end of the stream, I will have made a determination how much it bugs me. So you can see there, see the modeling. I don't know if that's the way you pronounce it, like mottling, like the, you know, unevenness, texturization look that we're giving this thing is what I'm trying to say. And I'm just trying to, as much as I can, mimic the look of that. And honestly, guys, we can probably just leave it here and let this dry. And that's probably going to look a lot like this guy over here. Oh, Yoda said, talent, much you have, says David Beck. Why, thank you. This is more like talent on the fly. We're just kind of throwing things together, and we're like, I think if we mix this and this, it might work. It might not. You know, you just never know until you try it. And nothing like trying it on our final piece to really, you know, bring up the excitement. So I'm going to let that dry just a moment there while I figure out, like, if we want to do anything kind of cool with this. And is my water getting nasty? It's getting a little nasty. So let me get these 3 brushes kind of cleaned off as much as I can. And we'll see what we can do here with these. Get them toweled off. Do I have any more paper towels? Yes, I do. On the ground, along with everything else. All right. Let me get these pretty dry because we're going to be doing dry brushing next. So it's nice to have this dry. And I ended up really liking this guy right here. And I'll give you guys a closer look of him in a bit. But let me see what else I got going on. I got these guys right here. All right. So, I think I'm going to go for it. I think I'm going to go for this thing right here. And clear off some of the, some of our coffee grounds. And move this guy over here. And that way I can move this guy more where you guys can see him. And let me see what I got going on here. I'm wondering how this bronze will look. But first, before I put the bronze, to really make the bronze stand out, I think what I'm going to do is add some of this burnt umber right here. Some burnt umber spots. So let's see, what cubby hole do I have left? We'll go over here. And I'm just going to do a little bit because I don't know if I'm going to like this. You know, I'm admitting I am not quite sure. So we're going to figure it out. I'm going to wipe off some of this paint. And, usually around like where the bolts are, that's where a lot of it just starts to rust. And the brush is a tiny bit wet, so I'm going to go in with more paint. And then I'm going to take my finger and kind of just blotch it a little bit with my finger. So see how we're kind of creating a little bit of rust where the bolts go in, and the bolts that we use to attach this to our control panel, well, we can do the same. We can kind of rust them up like they've been attached to that control panel for far too long. So again, and I'm just going to go around the edge, just kind of like blend it a little bit. And this is where coffee and cinnamon really would shine, you know, doing something like this. If you don't feel like you want to paint it, you don't feel like going out and buying all these different color paints or, you know, anything like that, you can always use food. And food projects are the best, right? So we have that. And then, oops, brush is like flying out of my hand. It's like, enough, stop putting effects on it. So then, let's see, maybe we can have some of it kind of join the edge like that. You know, little rust forming, and I know it seems like it's barely visible. Let me bring you guys in to what we're doing. There we go. It's a little bit better. So it got really kind of rusty on this side of the flange. And then maybe a little bit of, let's see, I don't think I want to put paint on the little threads there, but we can certainly, is this pretty tight? Yeah, that's gonna work. Oh, David Beck is already bringing up dinner with them chicken legs. And all I'm doing is just kind of dirtying this up a little bit, adding a little bit of brown. as if it's beginning its rust situation here, but you know, not quite yet, not quite yet. So I think that's pretty good, and we're going to use this as a basis of, you know, maybe how we want to do the other one. So I'm just going to darken up this brown so it's a little more visible against this this color is so dark, you know, this iron. So we need to kind of like go a little stronger with it, and that's my strong sound effect. So let's see, we got that, and then I'm going to go with, what color do I want to go with? Do I want to jump into red oxide already? Usually I like to use like an intermediate color and then go to red oxide, because red oxide, this is like your classic rust color right here. Let me see if I can, whoop, right there. Yeah, right there. That's your classic rust color. So I'm going to put him in view kind of like that. And then maybe move this guy over here. Yes, not awkward at all. So I'm not going to change the color on my brush. It still has a little bit of that previous brown because I want to see kind of how these two mix. You know, if I kind of go in like this, is it too strong? Yeah, I don't think so. I think this works. I don't know. What do you guys think? So I'm going to go around, kind of rustify this thing. Whoa, that's a bit much there. Let me let me wipe. A little too much excitement. Too much excitement. It's like when the rust starts to really look like paint, that's when you know you went too far. And this red oxide, that's the color that the cinnamon gives you. And cinnamon just does such an awesome job with this. I love cinnamon, so I'm not going to spare it for this project. It's one of my favorites. You can add it to coffee. Cinnamon cake, cinnamon coffee cake is one of my favorites. Love that. So I'm just going to kind of connect this. And see, we're getting some rust, you know, and I thought this would look cool rather than just leaving this as is, adding a little bit of a rust effect here. And you can pretty much apply this to all of your steampunk projects. I mean, this is like kind of what it is. It's just adding these colors. And for right now, if you use iron pipe, we've only used two colors. We've only used the burnt umber and this red oxide. And you might have just been able to do red oxide itself, but I find that putting it on top of burnt umber allows it to kind of blend in. It's sometimes a little too stark when you put it directly right onto the piece. And I think that's pretty good. I don't want to go nuts with it. That's nice. So by the time we put our bolts here, if we age our bolts, then it just looks like it's been fused, you know, in holy matrimony for quite some time, like a lot of rusty things are. And so then I had put a little bit of brown on here, and I'm just going to splotch some rust on there. A little bit. We're not going to over rustify it because we have to remember that the control panel is going to be brown enough. And so if you add too much rust, then the whole thing just starts turning really, really brown. You know, a little more there, like, you know, things kind of went wrong there. It's like, oh, I bet you guys would like to see this. Or not. And I'm just going to go around like this. And all I'm taking is like you know, it's an old brush. I love the really inexpensive, you can buy them by the bag type of craft brushes. Nothing expensive or, you know, crazy. They're great for things like this. And if you forget to wash them, it's okay. You know, you still have 50 others. And sometimes when you do leave the paint on, you can use those brushes for different effects and things. So I think that's about as rusty as I'm going to make it there. Unless you guys want more rust, we can always add more rust. But I'm going to put this guy aside for now and go back to now this guy. Because now this guy and this guy look totally different. You know, this to me looked very steampunk until now you compare it to something like this. And I was about to leave it alone, but I'm glad I didn't. So I'm going to quickly replicate what we just did on this other guy here. So that means going back to our darker burnt umber there, and we clearly need more. So let me pop in some more. And David Beck is saying, oh, cinnamon cake. Now I'm making him hungry. Well, it's about time, you know? Because him and some of you posting the food always making me hungry. All right, so let's get some of these. First, let me put this in a place where you guys can see. And I'm going to get kind of around here. I'm going to go ahead and color our. And let me wipe off my brush because, which is the correct one. It's still got the red oxide. So I'm putting the color down and I'm like, that's a little bit lighter than I would like. And then David Beck is saying, it would be a boring project if Dr. Frankenstein had WD-40. Yeah, very much so. It'd be a snore fest. So thankfully, didn't. All right, that's better. That's much better. I'm gonna obliterate the shine there. I'm gonna turn this around. Now, yay or nay on the slime effect? I'm not sure. Or if it's too much. I could also make it coming out of the panel too. That would look pretty cool. Went a little overboard there, but luckily. Oh no, not my insulation. I'll hit it up with some white if it offends me way too much. But I think it is just part of the burn effect, so I think we'll be good. And I'm gonna go pretty heavy on this bolt here just to get it covered up. That's looking pretty good, like our rust buildup. And I'm going to fade this out. Now, I love the corrosive green, you know, effects, but that doesn't happen on this type of metal. That's more copper. Copper, you can start adding that white crust, the greeny, the bluish type of really pretty corrosion that you get on there. So I'm trying to keep it steampunk, but also true to the metals somewhat, you know, somewhat. We don't have to go too crazy. So without changing the color on the brush, I'm just gonna, you know, wipe it a little bit. I'm gonna now go back into my red oxide, except for the fact that I noticed that this bolt got a little shiny on me. So I hit it up again. And here we go, a little bit of red oxide. And this empty tube here, or empty hole, this is where our tube is going to come out of. Our copper tube. And this is going to also double as an air escape for our bubbler. So it's a decor that we're going to add, but it's actually going to be a functional decor. So go us. We're thinking of everything. A little more rust. That insulation, to be honest, I had no idea how I was going to approach that. I was like, well, you know, we'll start with the coffee grounds and kind of see where it goes, what colors to use. And I'm like, well, let's start with kind of a dark yellow, because we all know that's kind of how it starts with burning insulation, and then kind of go from there. But all in all, I think we got kind of a nice cool effect going on. And That's pretty, that's pretty rusted up. So now the rest of it looks pretty lame, you know, so let's kind of fix that up a little bit. And I'm gonna go back in here and just kind of add a couple touches and splotch with my hand. And normally I would be dry brushing this on, but because this iron pipe is so dark, I'm actually going in like a medium dry brush, I guess I'd call it. So that way the colors connect. And now I'm going to, is this dry? Can I hold it? Yes, kind of. I'll hold it by the insulation. I'm gonna hit up this guy now a little bit too, and I'm gonna hit some rust right along this edge right here. And let me get a little bit more burnt umber. I keep running out of that color, so I'm gonna go nuts with it. I'll put a little bit more. And I am gonna wash my brush. That way it doesn't mix with the red oxide too much. I really want that dark brown base before we add the red oxide on top. Now this would have really looked good. What I may do is once the bolts are fully locked down, go back with some coffee grounds and use my brush with the Mod Podge and just goop a little Mod Podge around and build up kind of that crusty rust that you see around the bolts. But I want to make sure they're tight before I do that, and I might build some of that, crustier rust around certain areas of this as well. I think that's going to look pretty cool. Let me move this out of the way. And where was I? Oh yes, burnt umber. Let's see. And the idea, I thought I knocked something with water, but no, I didn't. We're good. We're good. Now the idea is just to kind of start getting in here. And this is colored a little bit differently than the flange, but the same effect seems to be working pretty good. I'm gonna bring that up here. And as we start adding to the project, it starts to get kind of like big and tough to work with. But I'm going to refrain from gluing the bottom to the water bottle until we have our LEDs all wired up. And then we'll be able to glue it with impunity and not have to worry about having to take it apart later on. Because I screwed something up and then we got to go backwards. It happens. All right, guys, this is looking pretty good. Pretty good. I'm glad I kind of went this direction. I thought it was already looking good without having to rust up the pipes, but I'm kind of glad I did. And you can see what I'm doing. I'm just stabbing it, making little dots and letting the bristles kind of create the irregularities. And I'm kind of going nuts on this one. Let me get the bottom of the neck here. There we go. Kind of gives it a nice brown tinge. Just gonna brownify this this area right there, the lip, I guess, where it connects. And then if I put both together, let's just make sure they look kind of good together. Yeah. Now the only really shiny part is the threads. I'm kind of hesitant to put paint unless we can put a little paint on the threads where we know we're not going to thread in. So that way it's not just so stark shiny. Although if you really think of it, oops, I'm like flying paint, throwing paint. If you really think of it, it's getting heavy. You're not really even going to be able to see those threads by the time you put it on the wall. But you can already see that all the weight of this thing is going to be up top, which is going to be anchored to our control panel. The rest of it is going to be not very heavy at all. So that's why I thought anchor that bottle cap up to the top here so we can just screw and unscrew the bottom as we see fit, right? So I'm thinking that's looking pretty well together. I'm just going to add a little bit of red oxide here, and that should bring these two pieces together. Let's see if that's true or if I lied. All right, what did I do? I think I started on here. Oop, that's a bit much. Look at that. That's what I was talking about. Like, oh, it looks like you painted it on. The paint effect. All right. Ooh, I like that chip that just happened. That's pretty nice. I'll take advantage of it. This is not awkward to hold or anything at all. And I'm just gonna work my way down. Where I put the darkest brown is where I'm kind of going heavier with the red oxide. I'm gonna bring it down the neck here. And then I'm gonna fade it out, or as I call it, gradient it out. Oh dear, anyone like jumping on the stream right now, or like just became a member, they're like, this chick talks all weird. Like, what is she saying? What are these words? That's why we need the dictionary. We definitely need like an ongoing yearly like volume 1, volume 2. And before we know it, it'll be like the Klingons with their own language. I don't know if any of you guys were mega Star Trek fans. I was and am, you know, both Star Wars, Star Trek, you know, watch all of those. I never got to the point of speaking Klingon, but I know certain people could just like totally speak it like a first language, you know, like it's their first language or something like that. So we're pretty much going to have our own version of STEM Klingon or Rachel Klingon or Wrench Army Klingon language that only we'll know what the heck we're talking about, right? So I think that's pretty good. You know, they're both looking like they belong, except for these. And I'm wondering if for these I should do like an acrylic wash of some sort, and that might blend it a little bit better rather than putting paint on the threads. I'm not a huge fan of putting paint on the threads, but they're also not really going to be visible. That's right. I did tell you guys that, because that's what it will look like when it's anchored to the wall. So I mean, the only threads you see are these, and that's pretty. Those, for whatever reason, are dark. The other ones are like super shiny. So they're very happy threads. So I think that looks pretty good. Now, the only kind of eyesore that I see that is not, is that a fly in the corner? I think that is a fly in the corner. Anyways, I don't know if you guys see it, but the only thing that I see that doesn't match is this portion down here. So we made a really good job of making this look like hammered metal, but now it's almost too perfectly hammered metal. We're gonna de-perfectify it a little bit. So I'm gonna use my burnt umber again, and let me just wash the brush. And then I think that'll be it for grungifying a lot of the metal components. And let's put in our copper tube. And then I think that's kind of it. I just have to get the other bolts in, or the washers on the other side, the nuts on our bolts on the other side. And then that'll anchor our cap. Clearly the cats have been around, because like you roll the project on the workbench and they all come out furry. All right, so we were going to do this portion right here. And I'm going to cheat and move it towards me. And because this is paint and not the iron pipe, I am kind of blotching a little bit more, removing it. And I'm just going to go around and just kind of really lightly create a gradient effect. And what I like about this is because we are dry brushing, the paint dries really fast, so you can start handling it, you know, pretty quickly here. Ooh, I went a little nuts there, little nuts. You can always use your finger to kind of blot it, and we have some hot glue gun wisps, as I call them, like little spider webs that come out. So I think we created some really cool effects, not using very many things, you know, just paint, coffee grounds, and I think I may add some coffee grounds to the bolts once I finish them, so it creates that really cruddy, rusty look. And what am I doing here? What am I doing, people? All right, so I think that's pretty good. And now let's add our red oxide, and then we're done with that. And I'm not gonna clean my brush. I'm gonna take the very last of our little red oxide here. A lot of it has dried, so I'm just kind of taking what's left over. And I'm just gonna start with the edge. Ooh, that's a bit much. Let me wipe some more away. There we go. This is kind of neat because it'll look like it's, you know, rusted onto the water bottle. And it doesn't help that I'm not holding it steady because the camera is like, wait, I can't focus. What are you doing? What are you doing? So that's looking pretty good. Now with the brush really dry, there's barely any paint, I'm just gonna go through and try and blend this a little bit better because as you can see, there's rust and there's almost like a line where it stops and it goes right into the rest of the metal. So I'm just gonna just kind of blotch it a little bit so it's more even. It's not so like the rust stops here. It just kind of gradually fades itself. And I'm mangling these bristles. But you must have pain for my effect. Yes, you must suffer. Brush, give me the effect. All right. So this, I think, is looking pretty good. I mean, I thought, you know, this was going to be a problem back here, but it turns out it once I rustified or, you know, added rust effects to the iron piping, this thing back here actually looks pretty good. Like it's all beginning to look like it belongs, you know? So that's awesome. And let's see it together with this guy. And now we're kind of having this, if I were to screw it on. So we got this. Guys, that's looking quite believable, I think. Look at that. All right, so what do we have left? Anything? Oh yes, let's do our iron piping. So in order to do that and not be fighting this thing, I am going to remove some of these components that we just painted. And this one is coming off these two pieces as one, so that's good. We'll just kind of put it over here, and then that way that can kind of freestand. And now we can work on this without, maybe mostly freestand, without worrying about it. All right, so here I have some quarter inch diameter copper piping, and I'm just gonna check that this hole, I drilled it enough for the copper piping because I made it big enough for our bolts, but clearly not big enough for this guy. So let's go ahead and do that first. And I'm going to gently, you know, as if this was anchored to the wall, you know, ideally I would just do this and it's time to fill it again. So let's see, what was I doing? Yes, drilling. And I think I popped you back here. And since you're 1/4 inch, maybe I'll just go 1/4 inch with the drill bit if I don't already have it on. Nope, I did not have it on. So hopefully I don't try and drill this and now it's just gonna go bleh all over and destroy it. Hopefully not. Our fine work. It is pretty fine. All right, so I'm gonna just drill and try and make that hole a little bit bigger. All right, that went in too easily. Sometimes when it goes too easily, it's a little scary. You're like, uh-oh, what did I break? What did I break? All right. So I think it'll fit now. We'll see. If I force it, it will fit. All right. So let's screw this on and figure out how we want to do this. So maybe I need the help of something. There we go. That was the biggest stretch I've ever done. All right, and let me put this in its little base. That might make it a bit sturdier. There we go. I don't want to overbend it, you know, like kink it. So maybe, and I totally am facing myself while doing this, which is not polite, but I just kinked it. I said, we don't want to kink it, guys. And what's the first thing I do? I kink it. There, let's unkink it. All right, so let me try and gently start moving this thing down. It's bendy, you know, it definitely bends, but it's not. It's not the nicest. All right, let me see how far down this goes. And I'm cheating. All right. So I think something like this, and then this is kind of bending the wrong way, but we'll unbend it and make it bend the right way. All right, now we're gonna move this. Hopefully we can get this to look somewhat interesting. And that's kind of the idea. Now that I know where it wants to go, hopefully it won't fight me as much. And I may actually kink it just to get it to bend a little more sharply. Because after all, it is just a 1/4 inch. And I think I want to bend it a little more sharply here. There we go. Now we're getting somewhere. Although it would be nice to keep this bend a little bit closer. And I know, like with brake lines, you know, similar to copper tubing, they do have bending machines that allow you to bend it without putting the kinks in it. But I don't have one of those lying around, so ours might get a little bit kinked, but then we can just go in with pliers and unkink some of it, so it's not overly kinked. All right. So I'm trying to get it to the basic shape, and what my thought is, this will come out of this hole. Like that, you know, this is facing forward. This will come out of this hole and start to wind all the way down the bottle, or at least, you know, a portion of the bottle. I think that'll look pretty neat. So I'm just turning this around as I battle it. I mean, this is like the slowest battle known to man. And all I'm gonna do is just try and get it a little more 90 degree than it wants to be. Luckily, I also have another piece in case I really botch this. So this is kind of our test run, our first test design, and I'm just gonna pull this out now that I know where I want it to go, and really put it in a position where I can go to town on it, you know? So, let's see, I want to bend this in a 90 degrees, so I'm going to hold it here. Oh, wrong one. There. Ah, much better. And then I'll try and unkink that as best I can. So now we're going to start bending this. How did I bend this so easily the last time? I don't know. I must have had my Wheaties or something. And today I'm just like struggling to bend it. All right. So now we can start to move this thing. As I've been saying so many times, we can now start moving this thing in the direction we want. It's like you said that half hour ago. All right. So I think once I get the basic shape too, I can then work this on the tabletop a little bit better. But I'm thinking, is there a way, instead of fighting this, that I can already use the basic shape I got going on? And let's instead start from the bottom up, since it's almost kind of there. And so this guy will go here. I'm just scrunching him. And let me back you guys on up. Whoop, wrong way. So you can see the battle royale that I'm having with this thing. And I think also a good thing to do is I do have, I'll be right back. I have a big old piece of 3-inch PVC, and we can wrap this thing around that PVC pipe perfectly and not be struggling with trying to hand bend it. So I'm gonna put you on a 5-second intermission, and I will be right back. All right, I am back, and I'm gonna try and wrap it around this 3-inch PVC here and move this thing out of the way, because we're just gonna end up maybe even ruining my beautiful piece that we did. So I'm gonna move that kind of out of the way. It's like top heavy, which was kind of the point. You know, the top was supposed to be the real robust portion of this. Maybe I'll just unscrew it. Make life easier, right? Put that all there, and I'm going to move these paints totally out of the way because I've already knocked them down so many times. But they like it. That's why they get in the way on purpose. They're like, knock me down. All right, so the idea is to try and use this copper pipe to bend a nicer bend that I'm doing, because the bend I'm doing is pretty hideous. So I guess I'll just start like this. And it's like, I'm not going to do it. There. Now I'm going to unbend this top portion to get a much tighter bend around this PVC pipe. Yes, that is much better. And then once we have the shape we like on here, then it'll be a ton easier to transfer it, rather than try and freeform it in the air and not have really anything to hold on to. So that is looking pretty good. And some copper working tools would be nice, but I think I'm doing it like a lot of you guys would, with no copper bending tools. So that's looking at least a ton nicer than what I would have come up with. I'm going to have me my Popeye arms pretty soon here. So now we're probably going to have to bend this the opposite way. Now I do have a couple waves going on, you know, a couple waves, but nothing that I think we can't sort out. There we go. That's mostly good. Now that we have the spiral done, It's looking a more like an even spiral. I think we can get the rest done. So now this is bending the wrong way. So I'm going to have to bend it the, a correct way, which I think is going to be up like this and up and over. But let's put our top back on to kind of judge where this is going to be. Okay, and I think I'm not going to use the base. I changed my mind. So let's see where that hole is. Where are you? And it's right there. So I'm going to try and aim for it. I mean, I might be able to just... So awkward. Okay, so I know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to... like that. Oh, we're almost there. It's almost. It's like the one kind of cool copper thing, and it's like looks all jangly. All right, so it just needs to curl a little bit more, and I'm doing this in my lap where you guys totally can't see, but I might use the help of the PVC pipe. And I think I want to curl it around just a bit more, one more time. If I make the face, it helps. There. Using the PVC. All right. That might work. That might work. And I'm just trying to stick it through the hole. There we go. The hole is like pretty snug, which is good. I thought that I was going to have to use some hot glue in there just to kind of keep it together. But this is kind of a mock-up, and I'm going to see if I can straighten this out a little bit better. But let me get this PVC out of the way. So the idea was this, and I don't even know if this looks all that great, but if it were bent, a bit better, like, it starts off good, and then it just, and then this first part here, and then it evens out a little bit. So I think I just have to really work this part. And I think if I take a piece of 2x4 and I make these sharp edges right here, and then I lay this on top of a 2x4 and make this really sharp. Trying to do it by hand with your hands clearly doesn't work really well. And so the mock-up idea was to have this, the air travel through this tube anytime air needs to be released, and then just kind of like, release down here. Obviously we won't see or hear anything because it's very, very just gradual. As the air pumps those little bubbles, well, that air needs to go somewhere. So that was kind of like my idea of, an air escape. Now I could have just drilled a hole and left the hole there and let the air escape that way, but I thought, let's take advantage of this, and then create something kind of cool. Now this is kinked, but it's not kinked all the way, so it's still enough for air to get out. I don't think, you don't need a massive exhaust port for your air. And so I think something like this, I'm going to continue using the 3-inch PVC because I think I can get this a little bit better. And I also have another piece of 1/4 inch that is not as mangled as this. It's actually pretty straight. So I think I'm going to start from scratch and start from the bottom, and then use a couple wooden blocks to get these straight edges here, and then I think I'll be good. But this is kind of the general mock-up idea that I had of incorporating a neat pipe like this, and then of course this will go into the wall. And then Dave Becca is asking if I have sand in the shop. I do not have sand. I have a whole bunch of kitty litter though, so, I don't know where you're going with this, if it's like a technique to straighten this out or anything like that, or sand for more rust effects or anything like that. But I'm sure sand is easy to get. I can go to any like toy store, I imagine, and get like children's sand, for like sand boxes and things like that. So elaborate on the sand thing, because now I'm super curious as to what that is and how we can use it for this project. So I'll just await your response there. But I don't know. I like the copper and the, and the iron. And David Beck is saying, if so, you can fill the tube with sand to prevent the kinking. Ooh, good idea. And I think that the kitty litter I have is fine enough, like it's a fine enough dust that it'll definitely fit in here. So the only thing I have to do is when I snipped these ends, they got kind of kinked shut. So I used a pliers to open them up. See, so there's a little bit of an opening, but I can certainly stick something in there. And Frozen Mustache is saying the same thing. Put sand in the copper pipe. So thankfully, I have a whole other one down below that I can do this with. I also have a 3/8 inch one, but I think I'm going to have a bit of a tough time bending that one. But we can use it for other decor, I thought, around the panel. So I do have that thicker copper pipe. This one we can use for decor around the panel as well, because I mangled it already, but I'm sure we can still find some use for it. And then I have another length of 1/4 inch that's just like this, unmangled, that I will fill with either kitty litter because I think it's fine enough. I think it'll get in the tube. If not, I'll just buy some children's sand, and that's a great idea. I'm gonna, put that one in my pocket. I'm putting that one in my pocket to do for the weekend. And so, guys, I don't know. What do you think? What else does it need other than a better copper, wrapping, paint-wise? Any other effects you guys want, slime or anything like that? I think for now, this is looking pretty good as is. We got some nice rust effects. We got some nice insulator burn going on. And then once we fill this with our fog juice and switch on and off the colors, we can even mix colors and make it purple or, have it react to the lightning detector in some way. So I think we're good. And then I'll wire up the 2 LEDs here and figure out the wire length, because the next thing I'm going to build is the control panel. And that's pretty simple. That's a wooden box. I'm thinking I'll probably make it about 3 inches thick. Meaning 3 inches hollow inside for us to put all of the electronics we want. So we'll be able to fit our 5-volt pump, our 5-volt air pump that's going to pump air for our bubbler. We're going to be able to fit I'm thinking of putting the mini fog machine in there, or probably hiding the mini fog machine inside the faux cathedral window, which is what I think I'm going to do, and put a tube from the tip of the vape pen up into Frankenstein's tower. That way the smoke doesn't have that far to travel. And this will be mounted higher up than our vape pen, so it'll use just gravity feed. Oh, and we never drilled the hole for the bottom, but I'm going to hold off on that because I'm probably going to want to struggle with this a lot more, and I don't want the little coupler thing to get damaged or bust a hole through this. So I also have to get a couple nuts, to finish securing this lid. But all in all, this is pretty much there and almost ready to attach to our control panel. So the control panel, like I said, I think I'm making it about 3 inches hollowed inside. Paint it or stain it on the outside to give it that rich wood, which I think will really set this copper pipe off. I'm excited about that, and I'll leave some blank space on there for us to continue version 2.0 of this project kind of in the background while we're building other things. And I think it'll look nice. I'm like super getting excited to wrap this up. I'll get all that stained up for next week's streams. And just as a reminder again, for next week, the Monday public stream will be Tuesday, and then this stream, our Wrench Army streams, will be Thursday. Just for next week, 6 p.m., and I'll be posting about it and stuff. But all in all, guys, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for your support. It is because of that we're able to have fun, make mistakes, buy more stuff, and really experiment and see what we can come up with. And, all of this is your guys' ideas. I'm just kind of grabbing them from the chat and stick them all up in my pockets, So I need to start wearing the big sweatpants with the giant pockets, or cargo pants. So I have more pockets to stick all these ideas. So have a great rest of the night. Have a great 4th of July holiday, and I will see you guys next week. But you all know I'm on Discord just about every night. So hop on there, post up your comments, post up your ideas or other suggestions. If you think of something that we did during the stream and you're like, oh, you should have done it this way, or a tip or something to help me along, definitely post it. And I will see you guys. Happy holiday!